to make sure that that DART meeting happens sometime this year. We do have a goal to have it happen in 2023, and I've been in discussion with a couple different entities that are willing to pay into that, so we can pay the fee to have you guys come up. We do intend on having that DART meeting in 2023 still. You don't know exactly when yet. Find the money first, and then we'll be able to email you and say, hey, we got the money. When can we schedule this?
Sure.
So.
Great. Well, so do you want to talk through some of the? Go ahead, Dalton.
I just had one question, and I know Josh and maybe some others had some questions or agenda items, but I think because this slightly differs from our last conversation about kind of a First Friday group and then doing like the First Friday committee, and now it's kind of 90% First Friday committee and the other stuff that can support that moving forward. Is this a thing that you've come across before? Have people done this before? What would you say your advice is on kind of taking this approach and what we can do to make sure to move forward and not just only peak at First Fridays? Because I would hate for that to happen.
Sure.
And so, I would just be interested in your feedback about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, like I said to you all, anything you do, I want you to be able to do it at a level of excellence. And so, taking this in smaller bites, setting a goal to do First Fridays for a full 12 months and kind of rolling that out in a methodical way is probably really smart. The folks that are around the table then know exactly what they're signing up for. It can be a lot less overwhelming to kind of focus smaller and, but ultimately I will be here to kind of lean on you all when you feel those wheels turning and then the need for some other things to happen in the other areas of a full Main Street program. Because that's what you're going to see is that First Friday is just one small little thing. And while I believe First Fridays, it certainly touches on organization because it's helping you all sort of get together, work through some work planning, figuring out tasks and leadership. It certainly focuses on economic vitality and economic development because it's going to be impactful for your downtown business district to hopefully garner some additional foot traffic on a monthly basis. It's also going to bring your attention to the sidewalks and making sure that things are people friendly and pedestrian friendly and all that kind of stuff. So it certainly leans in on design, and then this is totally a promotional type activity. So I think that First Fridays is a great place to kind of start with your organizational capacity where it is, but then, having that goal in the back of your mind that you all want to, sort of put together that 1-year plan that will also sort of bring to the forefront those other 3 points a little bit more. So I think this is a good place for you all to start, and it's certainly, something that's really vital and important.
Yeah, I think I would like to see personally, and of course it'd be a group discussion. We have the bullet points of Main Street. One of them is First Friday. What are the other bullet points that typically are set as objectives for the organization? Because I know that the outline that we received the information, I think is good enough to give a guide, but not necessarily like what all the objectives of the Main Street is. And I think about the DART meeting. Is that something that we would discuss kind of at that point, and then moving forward, knowing that we've successfully completed year First Fridays, and then what other objectives could we take on from that point? And again, part of this is me trying to calibrate, well, what do typical communities do when they start Main Streets, and are we doing it the wrong way? And not setting us up for failure. So.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think you can do it the wrong way. I think that that's why I like the Main Street program and concept. And essentially, ideally what happens is you have an overarching board of directors. And that board of directors would do some bigger planning as far as setting your mission statement, which is to revitalize the downtown, however you all want to say that. But then setting 1, 2, or 3 overarching goals for the organization, and then handing those things to each of the 4 committees. So essentially what you're doing, Dalton, is you're starting with the promotions committee and just forming one of the 4 committees that would actually exist under the board of directors. So when the time comes and you all would like to put together the downtown assessment resource team visit, what I would do is talk to your First Friday committee and say, okay, which of you thinks that you would like to become more leadership in this organization and be on a stakeholder group that's going to kind of look at those bigger pictures for the organization as a whole, and then start to flesh out what we initially call a stakeholder group from there. And so by virtue of that, then you're building that board of directors, which would oversee the promotions committee. But it would, and then at the committee level, those committees would decide what are the objectives that meet the goals that are set by the board. So for instance, if one of the overarching goals winds up being that we want to increase foot traffic in the downtown, then promotions committee is already doing that. You all are planning 12 months of First Fridays. You are increasing foot traffic in the downtown. But then I'll want to form 3 other committees. One committee called Economic Vitality. And so they're going to work with the business owners to try to figure out, okay, what are we going to do in our plan of action to increase foot traffic in the downtown our way. And then design committee is going to take a look at, their focus is historic preservation and looking at how do we take care of our old buildings and sidewalks and cleanliness. Are there enough trash cans? Where are the benches? Those kinds of things. And so from the design committee perspective, they're going to figure out a program or project that's going to help increase foot traffic in the downtown. So essentially what's happening is that overarching goal that's set by the board is getting tackled from all 4 of the Main Street concept points. So instead of having one project that's increasing foot traffic in the downtown, I have 4 projects that are increasing foot traffic in the downtown in all different ways. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think we don't necessarily need those other committees developed for the DART meeting, correct?
No. The DART meeting will help you develop those. So all you would need in order to have the assessment visit is a stakeholder group. Yeah. That group of volunteers that says, I will give you 1 year of my time. I'm going to attend 80% of the meetings that are scheduled. And they put in 4 to 6 volunteer hours a month. And so from that group, eventually though, will form a board of directors and an official organization that will be your Main Street organization. So eventually those stakeholders will they'll fill out an application to become board members if they wish to continue beyond their first year and actually be on that first board of directors. They don't have to do that if they wish not to, but they will automatically become board members. So that's why I talk about how intentionally you want to choose those people instead of putting an ad in the newspaper saying, please, for the love of God, come and help us, right? We want to intentionally think about who is around that table, who are my worker bees, how do I get a full reflection of the community around the table, because it's great to have a business owner there, but I also need somebody from your library, somebody from your school system, somebody from your city, somebody from the Visitors Bureau, a resident, a building owner. But you don't want that group to be too heavily weighed in one direction or the other, because if it is, then, if I have mostly city people around that table, then you all can guess exactly what's going to happen. everything's going to be done at the pleasure of the city. If I have all business owners around that table, then everything's going to try to bring registers, right? But we have to have a more blanketed approach to revitalization in the downtown. And so trying to have a nice reflection of the full community is where you want that stakeholder group to be. But that's the only group that you need to put together. And then after the DART visit, you'll get a plan from us. We will help you set up those 4 committees from your board of directors. We'll help you transition the stakeholder group into a board of directors. So all of those organizational things are happening after that visit.
Yeah.
You all are actually, showing some maturity in wanting to embark on such a big project before you ever even have your DART visit.
Well, that's good to know. I think that the stakeholders getting involved for the DART visit was also part of the reason for the by the end of 2023 deadline, because I imagine that to take some time and making sure we make the right connection. So I did always kind of envision that when you guys have the DART visit meeting, that the people that attend would hopefully turn into the board or a portion of them. So.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, I'm done taking up all the air in the room. So if anyone had any questions, or Josh, if you wanted to get through some of your agenda items.
Yeah, I guess.
I had a question real quick about your history of working with these. What percentage of the DART actually go on to be more successful? Like you have 50% rate of success, or 10%, or?
Well, most of our communities that have a DART visit go on to develop a board of directors. Often it depends on sometimes the size of the community, but more often the financial viability of the organization, about how soon they wind up hiring a staff person, like an executive director, to oversee the whole thing. But most communities who have a DART visit wind up staying with the program in some capacity, and they take advantage of their benefits, and they start to attend trainings, and it's a pretty decent longevity or sustainability rate. But as far as communities moving up to becoming an actual designated Ohio Main Street program, by which they have to make application to do that. They have to hire a full-time executive director. And at that point, they're required to have a board of directors and the 4 standing committees and work plans, and then a 3-year projected budget, so that I know that they have financial viability. That it's hard to say success rate because we don't put a timeline on that. And so some communities move through that pretty quickly, like Lorraine. They were pretty expeditious when they decided that they were going to have their DART visit, and within 2 years they became a designated Main Street program, and they had a full-time executive director. Then I have other communities like Chillicothe who have just stayed at the downtown affiliate membership level, but they have a board, they have their 4 committees, they have an executive director, but she's not full-time. So we have them landing in all different places as far as what you would, I wouldn't necessarily call it success or not success in any of those instances. I think it's whatever the communities really need.
But mostly they do stick with it and continue. So my big question is, where do they get the funding for this full-time director? Is it raising funds like through the 501c3 kind of thing? They get businesses to donate to support it? Typically,
our model is that we like to see a third of your budget coming from your city or municipality. Almost all of our Main Street programs get some amount of money from their city. A third of their budget from earned income, so doing events like First Fridays where you're getting sponsorships or doing ticketed events during those activities. And then usually there's some form of a partnership, or we call it Friends of Main Street. So yeah, like a 501c3 donation kind of situation where businesses and individuals can become, I don't like to call it membership because a 501c3 is not supposed to have a membership. So, but in essence, that's what it is.
Friends
It's a
of Main
collaboration
Street.
of three or more sources. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
That's
that's for good reason too, because if you have more than 50% of your total budget coming from one source and that source goes away, then it really risks the viability of the organization. So we like to see a diverse amount of diversity amongst where those funds are coming from.
Okay.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Let me look through my notes here. Okay, so my first question is it ever good to have paid vendor space inside a like our buildings opposed to outside?
So, I know that in bad weather, of course, when it comes to the vendors, it's a lot nicer if they're inside where it's nice and warm. However, in the beginning, especially, as much as you can, Josh, I would put them out on the sidewalk, simply because the more activity on the sidewalk, the more people are going to pay attention.
It's just yeah, it's been difficult with that because our first one was December, so we're experiencing starting in the winter, which is we're experiencing like not being able to get food vendors to even show up. You know what I mean? So is that just a seasonal problem?
It is not necessarily a seasonal problem as much as you all haven't proven yourselves yet.
Trust.
You know, so once you have a crowd, it's not going to matter if it's December.
Sure.
Those food vendors are going to want to be there.
Sure. Okay.
So you're probably in the beginning issue of it, and also dealing with the weather. So you're kind of learning to ski on choppy water, if you will.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
at the same time, the one concern we had is if you start opening the doors to the inside, then that becomes an expectation from the vendors, and they expect you to give that up every time. And I told Josh, I said, if we put a dollar amount on the inside, it's going to force them to the outside, the ones that don't want to pay the fee.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that you could do that. And you know, here's the great thing: you all could do whatever you want, try it, and if it works out okay, then terrific. But if it starts to falter, then you might have to make some changes. And you know, with it being that you all are really sort of a private entity doing this, then you can make those changes at will.
I guess the main thing is we're not getting a good vendor turnout. What would you recommend us to do for these seasonal months to try and increase that?
So how have you all reached out to vendors, and are you putting any requirements on them?
Dalton.
A vendor call.
So one thing that has happened since we last met, Francis, was I had overseen the vendors for the December and January event. We didn't have an issue with the December event. We had way over the amount of people we were expecting, and part of that was due to we have a mall in our city that recently closed that Santa was at, that he wasn't at anymore with the mall being closed and demolished, and we put a Santa downtown and advertised that. And
we did two Santas
and
one Grinch.
Yeah, so we got a lot of people on the December event, and didn't have an issue with vendors, because I think in our advertisement we had put things like Santa Claus or the Grinch and Santa Claus and stuff, so people, you know, were there for that reason. Exactly. The January event, we had 27 vendors sign up for the December event, 5 of which were food truck vendors. And then the January event, we had no food truck vendors actually commit and show up. We had a few confirm, but they didn't show up. And then we had like 2 other vendors. And the advertising for both were social media, and we also have a local artist in town that has thrown festivals around downtown. Her name is Crystal, and she had sent out inquiries because she's also a food vendor to her connections. I can say that the responses I got back for the January event, all the food vendors that I had reached out to, all 7 of them, except for 2, had said they don't do food vending in January. And I don't know what's true or not, but they told me that. And then the other 2 had said they were interested and wanted to come. And then when they were supposed to contact me the week of, they never did. And so I don't know, I don't know the issue with that. I don't know the industry enough to kind of really prescribe anything, but I can say that the January event, we had about 150 people, so significantly less, but it was still a noticeable crowd of people that were downtown that wouldn't have normally been downtown. I guess that's just the synopsis of what happened.
Sure.
Again, I don't know the.
Let me put your mind at ease. First of all, and all of my communities that are doing 12 months of First Fridays, this January is absolutely the most challenging.
Yes, we already got
Always.
We're done with it.
Always. It's cold as shit outside. Everybody's spent their wad because Christmas is just over with. And so sometimes what I can do is I'll put out a message to my other programs and see what kinds of themes they're using in January and see if I can come up with any better creative ideas for you all. I mean, you've suffered through this January, so we won't have to worry about it really till next January. But I do know that that's challenging, and to hear that you had 150 people downtown, I mean, that's swell. I'll take that for a first time January 1st Friday. And it might be a little more challenging to get vendors in January. I would maybe work with some other nonprofits, maybe some churches, and maybe if you have like a local food pantry, something like that, doing like a nonprofit First Friday sometimes works really well, where those nonprofits can kind of highlight themselves. But then at the same time, for instance, if you ask a couple of churches to be downtown and let them bring their propane grills with them and roast hot dogs and give hot dogs away, those are some easy ways that you can kind of replace the fact that you don't have a food vendor, but you can't sell the hot dogs, of course, you have to give them away. So, go to Costco or go to Cisco, a couple of those food vendors that are selling to your downtown restaurants, and ask them to donate some hot dogs or something. It's super easy to get food donated usually when you go directly to the food vendors that your downtown businesses are already using. And then seriously, if you're giving food away, then the health department doesn't say boo to you. So roll some. And then if you're using grills in the downtown, then that's helping keep people warm. Another thing that we did in Delaware when I was running that program is in November, December, January, and February, I had burn barrels in the downtown. So my Parks and Rec department would bring those big metal trash can barrels from the parks, like 4 or 5 of them. And then we got a donation of firewood, and I just had made sure that there was a fire extinguisher close to each one of them. Worked with my fire department about placement, and then had a volunteer who was willing to stoke the fire all evening and kind of keep an eye on it. But those kinds of things can really help too in the colder months, especially when you have people walking around downtown. It's usually it's a little labor intensive when I've hauled my fair share of firewood in that instance, but certainly something that was totally worth the extra woman power to make it happen.
Sure.
That's cool. I like that idea. Because that's the first thing they think when of going to a First Friday outside in the cold weather. But wait, we can advertise the burn barrels. Like, you make that
That's
part
right.
of your advertising, so it kind of like, kind of calms those thoughts, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Well, and it adds atmosphere. Everybody likes to be around a fire. I mean, it's a cool thing to do, and a lot of communities aren't doing it anymore.
Yeah,
so.
that'd be good. So let's say you, for First Fridays, have vendors. Should they be getting paperwork, kind of like directing them, and then how do we stop cancellation rates? Like, how do we, because obviously, and I had this problem when I worked at DirecTV. I'd sign up 100 people and 50 would fall off, and like, we knew something was wrong in my pitch. So like, how do we keep people from canceling?
So how many people are registering, and how are they? What's the process now?
Well, I just actually yesterday was updated the form for February and sent that out. I have it posted on my personal Facebook page, our downtown page, our business page. I actually had several of my personal friends who have also shared it out. We have had 4 or 5 people sign up so far. I would have to double check right now. Okay. And I have had 2 other people contact me that they would like some more information. And they wanted, they had originally missed where the link to the form was. So I sent them the link to the form then, and I didn't hear back from them. So I'm going to check in with them tomorrow and make sure that everything's good, or if they need any more information. But right now we were just doing the Google form, and I believe we had talked to Faye at the Chamber of Commerce, and she was,
and so people probably did.
we had a form and a sign up available through them as well. So I would have to double check in with her if she has anyone that has signed up there.
Okay. And how many registrations did you get for December?
27.
27. And so did you all instruct them where to set up and how to do those things?
So the part of the reason I started it as a Google form was because you can, it's super easy, and you can give like a list of instructions in the description. All we have currently been doing is we will, prior to the day, determine the amount of people we have signed up, and then decide how to split them up in downtown, like what blocks to reserve for them. And then I just coordinate the amount of cones from the city to drop off and put those out. And in the Google form for the vendors, it tells them to pick a cone spot area, and they can set up in the parking space or on the sidewalk adjacent to their car that's parked. And all they have to do is just move the cone, park, and set up. And there's no organizing of you get spot 1, spot 2, spot 3. The one thing we have been doing though, or that we will try to do moving forward, and Brittany, depending on what happens with February, we want to try to split up the food trucks if we get them. So we get like 2 or 3 food trucks registered. We probably will tell them, hey, set up by this business, but still not give them an exact spot, just tell them a block to be at.
Sure. I like that. That's great. Low maintenance, and it seems to work really well. I would say if you're getting that kind of turnout again, even in February, I'd start charging them $10 even. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you're getting a lot of registrations and then people are bowing out, it's amazing if you just tie $5 or $10 to it, how that all of a sudden creates some sort of value, and they're going to lose something if they don't come.
So you charge it up front.
Yeah.
But look, the way we got it set up with our city, we can't charge. We've already talked about this. Remember, Dalton? Didn't you say that?
It comes down to sponsorship of the event. And you're right. It might get a little sticky if we charge who's that money going to, and if we don't have a Main Street organization.
So what if you were able to charge them $10, and then somebody walks around and gives them their $10 back if they show up, and the only way they're losing their money then is if they don't come?
So they put down a deposit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
A no-show deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
like that.
and you could
No
always
show
think
deposit.
about, I understand where the city's coming from, and I, frankly, at this point, I'd hate for you all to have to do too much work around money. If I were to backpedal a little bit, what I would advise is do it for 6 months and let's see. Let's see if you're still getting cancellations or no shows. And then, come June, then let's talk about how do we start implementing some fees in order to make people follow through. But I think that the more that people come and they see a crowd coming and they're getting something out of actually being there, then I think you're going to have less trouble, and eventually you'll have to start charging in order to keep from having too many.
So the February event we've already advertised as being free, so we'll probably have to skip that one, Brittany. But I do think about like the logistics of, are they sending Brittany like a Venmo or a Cash App like amount? I think about like how much time it would take to coordinate something like that and making sure that's still manageable.
That's why I think maybe just don't do it at all. Give it 6 months and let's see how it is.
Okay.
We take titles, driver's license.
Okay. Like on our end, I think that would be perfectly manageable for us, because I would likely set up some sort of electronic payment that was specifically for Main Street stuff, and that way, they can check in with me to get their deposit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and
it
would be easy for you all to get a fiscal agent until you get your own 501c3. I mean, just about any nonprofit would be willing to, I don't know if you all have a community foundation or something like that, but a lot of times they'll manage a small account like that. I mean, we're talking about less than $1,000. So.
Right.
And we do have that very feasible possibility with the Preservation Society, who's already acted as a fiscal agent that I'm on the board with. I know that they would be very willing to do that. It's just still like the person on the committee side that's overseeing the money and then reporting to the AAPS that, hey, I did. So that's all. But
yeah.
I mean, as far as like dealing with the vendor stuff, I have no problem doing that if and when it becomes necessary. So.
Cool. That's great, Brittany. Thanks.
I did, Dalton, want to ask you. We did. You said that we had 27 vendors set up in December, but excuse me, I'm sorry, this cough that won't go away. On the Google form that we have, it says that we're only going to accept 20. So is that just to cause people to like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm in that 20, or just like we don't know what we need?
We have. I did the math. I spent probably way too much time on it, but we have 93. We have exactly 93 parallel parking spaces in downtown, of which I would say 20 of them is outside of the range that we would want people to be walking downtown. And I think about I was doing percentages of like, okay, let's say 30% of the 70 spaces are taken up by cars that we couldn't get moved the day of. And then we have food trucks that might take up 2 spaces or need a generator space, and then kind of working it back from that point. And that's what determined the December event. I would say that my calculations were a little conservative. I think we can go more than 20, but I had just put 20 on that one based on that. I don't know if I have it on the new forms, but if I do, we could probably remove it. So
no, I say we were just talking about that, and we were, if we don't want to limit the amount of people that can be here unless we have to limit the amount of people that can be here.
And the reason we could accommodate more than, or I did accommodate more than the 20 was because we had inside business spaces where people weren't setting up in parking spots. So that's how we had more, even though 27 wouldn't have been an issue on the street with what we had though. So.
Okay.
All right. So my other question was, let's see. So I was going back through the website, and all the like membership stuff really confuses me. The graphs really don't help. But I did read that there's a 1-year affiliate membership for free. Is that what we're doing already?
you will get a 1-year downtown affiliate membership with your dart visit. So when you all pay that initial fee for your dart visit, then we give you a membership. You're not a dues paying member yet. I'm just paying it forward, Josh. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so you all you're totally fine. It would be, it's always great for us to get an additional membership, but if you want to hold out on that until you get your funding to do your dart visit, I just want to help you all get to a place where you're long-term sustainable and that you're not having fits and starts. I think that's why you called me in the first place. So
Well, as we progress, we have new questions. That's really what it is, and it's still like I can tell Dalton's still learning about where we should be when we are ready to have the DART assessment. Like we're still kind of learning as we go. So, what was the other one? Oh, my other question was like a lot of us are really like. I know that some people go to college for 4 or 5, 6, 7 years and have no idea what the job is that they're going to take on. And what I'm curious is, what are we taking on? So I was wondering, you have mentioned about inviting us to some of the heritage meetings. Is there any chance we could get that opportunity here in the next couple
absolutely.
months, just so we could see like what we're going to be a part of, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a revitalization series training coming up in Marietta on February the 15th and 16th. The training day is on the 15th. And it's all focused around design. So we'll have 4 different speakers. We're going to talk about historic tax credits. We're going to talk about murals and public art and how those things get implemented and started, and how to get through the city talking about what the hell is art in the first place. And so, yeah, and what I'll do is I'll get our code for you to register for that. So Josh, I'll send that to you and to Dalton, and you all can send that out to the group. And if 1 or 2 of you can come to Marietta for the day for that training, a lot of our managers will be there, and so you'll be able to make some connections with them. And if you're not already, go onto our website and sign up for the weekly e-blast. There's a newsletter that goes out once a week, and that'll give you notification on any of those trainings. And if there's anything that you all want to pop in on, then just let me know, and I'll get you a code so that you can register.
Okay, I'm getting e-blast, and that's why I'm asking, because I'm seeing these these events, and I want to be there. Really, you know what I mean?
Great. Well, those the event for February hasn't been created yet. We just got speaker information this week, and so probably the 1st of next week that'll go live on our website. And when it does, then I'll have registration codes that I can send to you.
Awesome. I'm totally looking forward to that.
I'll also send you the save the date for the other ones that are coming up throughout the year. So I think the next one's in April, and then there's one in June, and then our final one is in September, and then we have a conference in October too.
I would love that.
Great.
I need the juice. All right, so I have one more question, and this is kind of like I want you to rattle it off as quick as you can for me, right? So we have our 12 months of themes wrote down, and next to that we have the +1, the cherry on top. So I'm gonna say January, you're gonna say a theme and a +1, just something that comes to mind. You get me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
okay.
give it a whirl.